Most modern smartphones exist within one of these categories: big rectangles with good battery life, or small rectangles with bad battery life. But there's one phone in the market that exists in the tiny space where those categories overlap. It's sold under two brands, Unihertz and 8849. I have the Unihertz branded one here, which they sent in for review a few months ago, and I've been using it quite heavily since. The reason I was so interested in getting hold of this phone is because I can get hold of this phone. Literally. Because it's one of a tiny number of modern smartphones that's small enough to use with one hand while still having plenty of processing power to manage everything I need a phone to do. The Jelly Star has been my main phone for over a year now, and while I do love it, its tiny 3-inch display is just a bit too small. The Jelly Max, on the other hand, with its 5-inch display, was a bit too big for me to comfortably use with one hand. The Tank Mini is sized right in between, with a 4.3-inch display, and for reference, here it is beside some of my other phones. Obviously, this isn't your typical thin, fragile glass sandwich. With an outer shell made from metal and rubberized plastic, it's designed to handle an impact or 5. It has front and rear cameras, 2 customizable buttons, a fingerprint sensor, a laser distometer, an infrared remote controller, and a really, really bright light that I'll show you in a minute. It doesn't have flagship specs, but the Helio G99 CPU is fast enough, and with a very generous 12GB of RAM, it never feels underpowered. Everything runs smoothly, though the Jelly Star is a little bit faster at opening apps. It has 256GB of built-in storage and a microSD card slot if you need more. The display is bright and vibrant, and the fingerprint sensor is fast and reliable, though I do tend to unlock it accidentally sometimes just when handling it. One of the main selling points, and the reason it's so thick and heavy, is the 5800 mAh battery. With this big battery and the small display, you get really long run times. This is the first smartphone I've used that I only need to charge about 2 or 3 times a week. There's a 100 megapixel rear sensor and a 32 megapixel front, and on lower budget phones I usually expect to see pretty bad results from the camera, but the Tank Mini turned out a lot better than I expected. In my experience with having 2 Unihertz phones now, I find that notifications can be a bit of a headache to get working properly. There's a lot of tweaking needed with the app blocker, the battery optimization, and the notification settings to get all of my app notifications coming through properly and on time. This is partly Google's fault and partly the fault of Unihertz's aggressive app blocker and battery optimization, which are turned on by default and can be quite fiddly to fully override for some apps. But I got everything working eventually. The only other negative I've encountered is that the bottom edge of the display doesn't seem to detect my touch. The sense area is not correctly aligned with the pixels underneath, so any apps with buttons along the bottom are quite annoying to use, as I have to touch slightly above the area I want to press. With Android's pointer location overlay turned on, we can see a visual of this misalignment. I've only seen one other person write about this issue, and Unihertz told me that it's not something they've seen, so maybe my unit was just an unlucky one. I don't know if any of you feel this way, but I have a real soft spot for gadgets. I remember back before the iPhone came out when every phone I bought was radically different from the last, and they always had some cool new trick. I would have lost my bananas if you'd shown me the Tank Mini when I was a kid. I mean, it has a built-in FM radio and it shoots laser beams. Actual laser beams. The laser isn't really bright enough to use as a laser pointer unless the room is quite dark. It also diverges quite a lot. This is it compared to a typical dollar store laser pointer. But it's there as part of the distometer, which allows you to measure distances. Unihertz has a disclaimer that we shouldn't expect the measurements to be super accurate, but I've tested this quite carefully, and at least with mine, it's accurate right down to the millimeter when checked with a tape measure. So that was an unexpected surprise. The most useful of the built-in gadgets is the light on the back. This is incredibly bright and I absolutely love it. Living in a rural area without street lights, I like to keep a small torch in my pocket when I'm out at night. No, I don't have to. There's also a standard LED if you just want some light without blinding everyone. And then there's these police lights that I'll never use. And the radio, I love having an FM radio built into my phone. So that's what I think of the Unihertz Tank Mini. It's well protected, waterproof, it has the perfect display size for my hand, massive battery life, and it's packed with gadgets, which makes it the Swiss Army knife of phones. It's a bit on the heavy side, but that's something you'll have to accept if you want the multi-day battery life and all the extra features. I hope Unihertz will keep making phones like this because there are very few options for those of us who love phones with one-handable displays, and this is one of the best out there. One thing I wonder is, given that they named this the Tank Mini 1 right from the beginning, does this mean a 2 is on the way? I hope so. If you found this useful or interesting, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.